Uh, you know, I'm much older now. I'm old school in a lot of ways. And I kind of grew up listening to old sayings, from people a lot older and wiser than some of them, wiser than I could ever be. And I listened, and they would say, when you listen, you learn. And a man that thinks he knows everything is the most ignorant of them all, because now he's closed his mind to listening and learning, because he's convinced himself he knows everything about everything. That's what makes him ignorant. And when you're wrong, admit it. And that can be difficult for people with a big ego. They can't admit they're wrong about anything. And they will defend their ignorance to the death and want to argue with people to prove their point. I've been wrong about things in life, let me tell you. I was wrong once again, due to my inexperience with something. My experience I had was different. So that's all I knew. My inexperience was something I only really did once. Got through it okay based on the major amount of the work that went into this engine that is pretty common with other makes of vehicles. You still got a block, you still got heads, you still got valves, you still got a crankshaft, you still got bearings, you still got rods, you still got pistons. You still have valve springs, you still have rocker arms, you still have push rods. And all the basic setup can be so similar that you can apply one to another. But there are little differences to things. Due to my inexperience with small block Chevys, my inexperience came into play with something I said Monday pertaining to, the biggest kick I got out of that was I've always, advance, retard. I never heard advance, unadvance, And due to primarily dealing with Pontiacs and one Ford, in advancing your timing, it was clockwise. And even then, I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it because I was paying more attention to what I was looking at with the timing light on the damper. And I know, you want to get, some guys get so fucking technical with shit on here that it really doesn't matter, Harmonic balancer. Technically, it's not a balancer, it's a damper. It's not balancing your engine. All it's doing is absorbing all the vibration at the end of your crankshaft that's working its way through it. That's all it's doing. It's a damper. We call it a balancer. Some terminology becomes what they call commonplace. That's just what it's called, and who cares about what it's really, what it really is. It's a damper. And you have many different kinds. I was more concerned with looking at, once I knew the timing chain was in right, I knew the distributor was in right, and I fired it up right from how it was, dropped in there, and then I'm looking at it with a timing light to get my timing to where, I felt it should be, locked it down, tried it out, ran it, and then I dibbled and dabbled back and forth to see if I could find a sweet spot, which, took a little bit of time, but I found it, and then I got locked in, you know what I'm saying? So I was more concerned with what I was looking at than with what I was doing back here with this hand. So it was brought to my attention by a comment that, Pontiac goals, I guess several of the GMs, Fords, whatever there, to advance them, they're going clockwise. It's clockwise, no matter how you slice it, it's clockwise and counterclockwise, not all to the driver's side and passenger side. It's advancing and retarding. It's not advancing and unadvancing. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. And I saw that comment, I said, wow. So I looked into it, and it's absolutely true. Small block Chevys, to advance them, you do it counterclockwise. See that? I saw something. I wasn't so arrogant that I felt I had to be right, that I just blow this guy off. I know some people would have fucking blocked this guy so he'd never come back and say anything to prove him wrong again. You know what I mean? That's the difference with some people, what their ego and arrogance can do. Usually it works against them. Look at a guy, driver thinks he knows everything about everything. If he does, why is he always asking for advice on here? I don't get it, you know. I even thought about it. I said, Job will probably see my video and come back. See that? Uncle Brian's wrong. I was right. Uncle Brian's wrong. Well, I tell you this, Job, okay? Regardless of how I moved that on that 350, I pulled out of my C28 to build from 190 horsepower to 320 horsepower to put in my brother's little Pontiac Sunbird. I pulled this Iron Duke 4-banger out of in transmission, replaced it with a turbo 350 with a shift kit, and regardless of how I moved that, I had a timing right on there. And once I got it to run real stable and good, and it was, then I dibbled and dabbled and played with it once again with a timing light to see where it was, you found the real meat and potatoes of a sweet spot with it, where, it had a real good low in it, pulled strong, it would start up when it was hot, it wouldn't drag, and that took a little bit of the afternoon. And then once it was locked in, the car was able to start and run every time we got in it and turn the fucking key. Didn't overheat on him. Didn't drag, couldn't start it. It's very dependable for a few years, Now, how long have you been fucking with that? Still won't start and stay running. Forget about even wanting to drive it. The fucking wheels, bearings are locked up, brakes are all fucking bound up. You don't even know if that transmission or rear end really functions properly. If it could get you to the end of your fucking driveway. So all in all, the bottom line is, yeah, you were right and I was wrong. Well, are you? I was wrong. I was dead wrong. Due to my inexperience with having worked on a lot of small block Chevys that I guess this guy has, he said something, I learned from it. Another phrase I remember growing up hearing, you learn something new every day when you're willing to listen.